Welcome back, everyone. Our last presenter is Todos Medical Ltd. It trades on the OTCQB under the symbol TOMDF and engineers life-saving diagnostic solutions for the early detection of a variety of cancers. So attendees, remember, please submit your questions for Todos Medical right here in the webinar module. And let's welcome its CEO, Gerald Commissiong. Welcome, Gerald.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to discuss Todos Medical and what we're going to be doing here with regards to taking the company forward. We've been primarily focused historically on the development of cancer diagnostics for breast cancer and colon cancer and Alzheimer's disease, as we've added. We think that Alzheimer's is cancer of non-dividing cells of the brain. But what's most exciting about the company recently is really our developments in COVID-19. And so we're going to spend a good amount of time at the beginning of this presentation focusing on that. So our safe harbor statement. So we develop solutions in therapeutics, diagnostics, and immune support, with really the diagnostics end as the bedrock of what we're doing. Because of some diagnostic work we started out early in the pandemic, we ended up moving forward with the development of a natural COVID-19 antiviral oral pill that we call Tollovir. This is a therapeutic modality that is pursuing a very, very large market, estimated to be worth over $50 billion annually worldwide. And that's the same target market that Pfizer and Merck are going after with their oral antiviral pills. There's a very significant unmet need, given that there are currently no oral antivirals approved here in the US, and very few approved elsewhere under emergency use. And so we know that in order to really take the next stage in the pandemic to reduce fear, oral antivirals are very important. We are also developing the next generation of cancer, Alzheimer's, and COVID detection technology. I focus on COVID here because the antiviral that we developed is really based upon a COVID detection technology, all surrounding the 3CL protease, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the future, and which many, many people are starting to wake up to as a key component of the COVID-19 pandemic and the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Really, all of these technologies are focused on the immune system. And so these immunodiagnostics are allowing us to detect diseases earlier than what's currently out here. And this is especially true with regards to COVID. Early identification allows for early intervention. And this is what you're seeing in the trials and how you really expect to get efficacy on the early side. We expect to be able to treat from early all the way through end stage with our antiviral. This is all developed around novel technology platforms. So we have IP around our therapeutics, around our diagnostics, around our immune support technologies. And so, we are doing things in a proprietary and protected manner. Separate and distinct from all of this very interesting proprietary therapeutics and diagnostics and immune support, we do have a base business simply around selling test kits to labs, and then our own lab, where we run different kinds of tests focused primarily on COVID-19. We do PCR testing, neutralizing antibody testing, and respiratory panels. So that's our business. We have a revenue base. We did over $5 million in revenue in 2020. We're on track to do somewhere between $15 and $20 million for the year of 2021, and we expect that to grow into 2022, not including some of our hotter items in the therapeutic area and in the immune support area that could dramatically improve the forecast there. So getting into the key focus for us is really the oral antivirals. As we know, COVID is still lurking. We recently heard about the Omicron variant a little over 2 weeks ago, and we're starting to get more information on that. We know that, the question of what fully vaccinated mean is being debated because of waning immunity. People's antibody levels are getting lower and breakthrough infections are increasing. As recently as last week, there were more people losing immunity every day than there were either getting newly vaccinated or getting boosted. And we think there's been an uptick in vaccination since the Omicron variant, but it's still a situation where we're not really improving full vaccination. And at best, we're trying to maintain where we've been. So in the face of these new variants, Delta accounts for 96%. Obviously, we think Omicron is going to start taking market share from Delta in terms of infections. We see that going up. There's still 16 million Americans 80 and over who have depleted immune systems and for whom The vaccines and potentially even the boosters are not providing the level of neutralizing antibody titers that would give everyone comfort that they are protected from infection. And there's obviously a large immunocompromised population here in the United States that also has challenges mounting immune response in response to a vaccination or in response to disease challenge. So bottom line is there are a lot of people who don't have adequate protection from COVID. And questions now about what really is the value of the vaccination program. Is it really to protect against infection, or is it to protect against hospitalization and death, and what the strategies are? As a result of all this, there's really, I think, some soul searching that needs to be done with regards to our vaccination strategy and how we improve overall immunity, and perhaps even more importantly, how we protect people from getting severely ill with COVID and dying. And that's really where the oral antivirals seem to be able to bridge the gap that the vaccines simply cannot. We're not the only ones thinking about oral antivirals. Obviously, Big Pharma is heavily involved in there, and we think none is bigger than Pfizer. They said that this would be a game changer. They said this earlier this year, and it's proving to be correct. And we believe alongside them that the protease inhibitors, well-worn, well-understood targets for virals are the way to go. So we are in a phase 2 clinical trial in hospitalized patients with our Tollovir product. It's it's 3CL protease, so it's a 3CL protease inhibitor, as well as an anti-cytokine therapeutic drug candidate. Pfizer has a 3CL protease inhibitor only drug candidate that's going after earlier stages of disease, that in a phase 2/3 study that was stopped, and final analysis of all the patients enrolled through that interim analysis is ongoing, and it's expected that data is going to be submitted to the FDA for that very mild and pre-symptomatic population shortly. So just mild, not pre-symptomatic. So they're only going after unvaccinated mild symptoms. So when you look at the profile and how we compare with some of the other treatments out there, you can see Temple, which is in a phase 2/3 outpatient clinical trial from a company called Adamis. That's really it's a dual action anti-cytokine and antiviral. Their antiviral mechanism is RDRP. That mechanism seems not to be very, very effective as monotherapy. So as an ability to prevent the virus from spreading in such a way that people can move forward. So it is a dual mechanism, but their mechanism of antiviral is RDRP, which we don't believe is necessarily the right target. Merck is only an antiviral. They have no anti-cytokine activity in their compound, and theirs is similar to RDRP, but it's a little bit more in depth, and they call that mutagenesis. This is really forcing a lot of mutations to occur within the virus, and the hope is that so many mutations occur that the virus is not viable and it ultimately peters out and dies. So while this mechanism has shown promise in certain areas, there are a number of risks associated with mutagenesis, most importantly resistance. So what happens if it causes a lot of mutations but does not force the virus to die? All of a sudden you end up with a highly mutated virus. This is what's happened with Omicron. It's believed that this happened in an immunocompromised patient, but that is the exact patient population that Merck is going after, immunocompromised. And so it doesn't make sense to increase mutations in immunocompromised patients for whom already are causing mutations. That's a big question and a big unknown. There are also safety concerns related to cancer, to reproductive health, and other concerns around the utility of the pill. With that said, there was some early data from the interim analysis that showed a 48% reduction in hospitalization and death as a result of treatment with molnupiravir. We have seen that number has come down from 48% down to 30% with the most recent data. And that last cohort that was involved, obviously for it to go from 48 to 30, the last cohort must have been well under 30 to see that kind of reduction in efficacy. So there was a lot of debate going on with the molnupiravir pill, whether it makes sense, and certainly a lot of reservations at the FDA. So we saw a vote by the AdCom 13 to 10 So it wasn't nowhere near unanimous, and there were some very significant concerns with regards to the safety profile and the efficacy profile of the drug. So we think currently the leader in the space is Pfizer with Paxlovid. So it's no longer PF07304814. It's now called Paxlovid. This is a 3CL protease inhibitor. It targets the viral replication by inhibiting the 3CL protease. As we've seen, inhibiting the 3CL protease does two things. One, it stops the virus from replicating because the virus is unable to cut itself, because that's the function of the 3CL protease. The other thing that the 3CL protease does is it downregulates a molecule called NEMO, which is a cell surface receptor of NFK beta. NEMO is really the alarm system for the cell. So when it's activated, you see a local cellular response. IgA and other antibodies get activated. When it's deactivated, you don't see that immune response. And so we believe one of the things that's going on with the virus is it's producing a lot of 3CL protease early on. And this is what you see on Pfizer's website, the COVID life cycle. You see that the virus produces a lot of 3CL protease early on. It does it, one, to help itself divide. Two, it does it to downregulate the immune system. And those two things together are what cause high viral loads very early in the disease and allow the disease to spread. So by the time you identify or the body feels the presence of the virus, there's already all over the place, and that's where you get a hyperimmune response. Combined with that mechanism, there's also a second drug in the Pfizer formulation called ritonavir. Ritonavir is a protease enhancer. What that really means is it slows down the metabolism of the protease because obviously the PF07304814 has been metabolized pretty quickly in the blood, and so they need to slow it down so you get a higher PK concentrations. While that is important, the challenge, of course, that ritonavir does not only affect this one 3CL protease, which the 3CL protease is uniquely and only positioned around the nidovirus subcategory of coronaviruses, whereas ritonavir is ubiquitous. It slows down protease degradation broadly. And so that does have impacts in terms of potential drug-drug interactions, and that's something that I know Pfizer's been looking at closely. So they had some excellent data, 89% efficacy within 5 days of symptom onset. And they are looking at preventing infection post-exposure. So we do think that Pfizer is definitely the category leader. We agree that the mechanism of 3CL protease inhibition makes sense for the viral phase. We do think that there will be challenges with drug-drug interactions, especially in immunocompromised people who are taking other drugs. And so there's going to have to be some degree of caution in terms of prescription. We do think it takes pediatrics off the table. And given that there's no real impact on the hyper immune response that you see, we still believe that they will not be able to treat moderate or severe and critical COVID-19 patients. And therefore, that's where we went after, because we share that same mechanism, but we needed to go after, as a smaller company, a different patient population so that we could have some uniqueness to our compound in the market. So what we've done with Dr. Arad, who's the CEO of NLC Pharma, we are in the process of completing the acquisition of NLC Pharma, where we will have a joint venture 60/40 owned by Todos that will be developing Tollovir. Dr. Arad really specialized in understanding the different aspects of the disease and focusing and creating a formulation that could impact the virus from pre-infection, so preventing infection, through post-exposure prophylaxis, all the way through to mild, moderate, severe, and critical. So obviously the most challenging patients, as we all know, are the severe and critical COVID-19 patients. Given the formulation we put together, which is a robust 3CL protease inhibitor, which is exactly the same as Pfizer, inhibits viral replication and sensitizes the immune system. I'll talk briefly about some of the differences that we're seeing between the two compounds, because we have to test them head to head. In addition to that mechanism, we're seeing an anti-cytokine mechanism. And that anti-cytokine mechanism we think is critically important, especially in the later stages of the disease. moderate right before you go to the hospital to try and keep you out of the hospital. And then once you're in the hospital, severe and critical, trying to stabilize and then get you to be better so you can be discharged. That formulation of both antiviral and anti-cytokine, we believe, is the best activity for and profile of a drug for the treatment of severe and critical COVID-19. So we currently have a phase 2. We have paused enrollment on this study. We will be reading out on data, interim data, which may ultimately not be interim, sometime later this month. And then we're preparing for phase 2/3s in the next stage. Depending on the strength of the hospitalized data, the need of the different markets, then we will be looking at different ways to accelerate uptake. One of the most important things about Tollovir is that it's a natural formulation, and we have an excellent safety profile, so that we do not see any risk whatsoever of overdosing. So we can continue to dose, we can dose at high concentrations, and we expect that we'll continue to see effect, whether it's early, middle, or late in the time course of the disease. And we started late because we have differentiation over all other antiviral products. The other thing about Tollovir is that while it is an oral antiviral, it's a capsule. We, in our hospitalized trial, in the current trial, actually were able to treat patients who were intubated by diluting and putting it into the feeding tube of patients, and they were treated with, obviously either Tollovir or placebo. We don't know at this point. But the ability to liquefy and treat patients who are intubated is critical, because obviously, if you can't take the drug, you can't treat the patient. And so this ability does also differentiate us from the other oral antivirals that you see out there in the market. It's not only oral, it can be used in a different setting. So with regards to Tollovir and its 3-cell protease inhibiting activity, just to touch a little bit on what that means. It inhibits the 3-cell protease. The 3-cell protease is part of is in the family of nidovirus, subcategory of coronaviruses, and they all share a common catalytic mechanism of action. It's responsible for driving viral replication, as well as I mentioned, cleaving the NFK beta essential modulator, also known as NEBO, and that effectively turns off local cellular immune response alert mechanisms. So being able to inhibit this is very important. As I mentioned, we have done some head-to-head data, both in terms of viral replication, as well as this NFK beta and immune monitoring. And while we see reasonably similar viral replication inhibition activity in vitro, we see an improved profile for Tollovir in terms of sensitizing the immune system versus the Pfizer compound. So this is some new data that we have begun to generate, and we're extremely pleased with this, and we intend to publish this very shortly. So for us, as we get in and we are treating these severe patients, we think being able to activate their innate immune systems is very important later on in the disease. And we think that this could be a contributing factor as to why we're seeing such profound impacts with the ingredients associated with Tollovir. So when we talk a little bit about Tollovir, the only data we have now that we can share is from an observational trial with a treated group and an observed group that was conducted in 2020 by NLC Pharma. We do have over 5,000 case studies with the ingredients from Tollovir that have been used in patients worldwide, with anecdotal evidence showing very strong effect. Of course, anecdotal is not placebo-controlled trial, and that's why we're focused here on the phase 2 trial that we have ongoing. When you look at this data, obviously the key comparisons between the groups are reduction in time in the hospital. And this is compounded by the fact that there was a significant, obviously, total reduction in death in Tollovir group compared to the observed group. Now, it's important to note, in the Tollovir group, they treated until patients were all the way out of the hospital. In the current setting of the clinical trial, treatment was limited to 10 days. Because that's how every other trial was designed when this study was started. With that being said, we see profound effects And we're very hopeful that we'll continue to see profound effects in the current phase 2 study. Importantly, when you're thinking about, how do you get to a death in this trial, you first have to deteriorate. And so we saw no deterioration in the Tollovir group once treatment was taken hold versus deterioration in the observed group. Also, there were significant reduction in CRP, 50% of patients versus 10% in the observed group. So from a biomarker perspective, from a quality perspective, in terms of mechanical ventilation, in terms of days in the hospital, and in terms of death, it appears so far, based on this data set, that Tollovir is having an impact, and we're really looking to confirm that in the upcoming data, which we're very, very excited about. So moving to, why is it? Where did Tollovir come from? How did this come to be? Well, it's really all about Dr. Arad and the work that she's been doing. She worked in this area for over 25 years, originally starting with the common cold and focusing on the first SARS outbreak. That's when $18 billion was put in to develop strategies to screen for compounds, identify compounds, test compounds that could have a significant impact on the 3CL protease, as well as begin to understand how the protease could be used as a diagnostic. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So, it's got over 15 years worth of clinical development. Obviously, there were pauses during that period of time, but $18 million was put in. We currently have this phase 2 double-blind placebo-controlled trial. The interim data is in the middle of the analysis now. I've been on several phone calls as preparation is ongoing to get set for the data lock, which will be announced, and then ultimately a readout of the data. So we're looking at that in the next several weeks. We're very excited. And then based upon that data, we're going to be preparing for global phase 2-3 clinical trials in hospitalized and outpatients. One of the things that we are looking at when we're preparing these trials is really several-fold. We know that there's a significant need in the market for an antiviral of this profile that also has anti-cytokine activity and can help patients in the hospital. And so with this data, we do expect there are going to kind of be 3 bites at the apple for regulatory authorization. We think that some jurisdictions will allow regulatory authorization based on the overwhelming safety data of the ingredients associated with Tollovir, combined with the clinical data that we'll be generating from this phase 2 trial. So that will be kind of set one, and we're working to identify those countries that are likely to allow approval there early, and that may include Israel. So we are, advancing those discussions. And if that's doesn't meet the criteria for a specific jurisdiction, we're preparing for these phase 2-3 adaptive design studies. There will be an interim data readout in those adaptive designs, as we've seen with both the Pfizer and the Merck. And that interim could be another regulatory milestone that could allow for an emergency use. And then ultimately at the end of the phase 3, then we could see benefit, for the final group of countries to allow for authorization, provided, of course, we show efficacy. So we're very excited about the next several steps in this. And we formed a subsidiary, 3CL Sciences, to forward this and the other aspects of the 3CL biology technologies. Okay, now with regards to the dietary supplements, Tollovir and Tollovir Daily, that is really the next step. So some of the same ingredients, not all, but some of the same ingredients that are used in the Tollovir product are also used in the Tollovir dietary supplement for immune support. This is a product that has received certificate of free sale from the United States Food and Drug Administration as early as August 2020, and we've continued to build out our data set, improve upon our claims, our packaging, now getting it out into the marketplace, and we're now getting ready to drive a marketing campaign to expand sales. One of the important things for us, as we looked at this natural product and the different regulatory pathways, was really creating a distinction between Tollovir and Tollovir for several reasons. One, obviously, we're looking to get regulatory claims, efficacy claims with Tollovir. That is not something that we are doing with Tollovir and Tollovir Daily at this time. So Tollovir and Tollovir Daily are not approved by the FDA to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure any disease. However, they are authorized to inhibit the 3CL protease. And as people begin to understand the value of the 3CL protease and what it does, especially in light of some of the educational work Pfizer's doing with COVIDlifecycle.com, we see that this could be something that people feel will help them in the face of what's going on today. So for us, we wanted to make sure we could make this very safe product available, make sure people understand that we're not making any claims with regards to its efficacy, but we do think that it will help people out today. And so it's available on www.mytollovir.com. It's also available on Amazon, and we sell it in bulk on Alibaba for wholesale. The current bottle price is $329 per bottle. The next product we have is Tollovir Daily. So the strength of the 3-cell protease inhibition in each pill of the Tollovir Daily is less than the 3-cell protease inhibition activity of the Tollovir. The Tollovir 3-cell protease inhibition activity is reasonably comparable to the Tollovir. The Tollovir Daily is somewhat less. With that being said, we do think that in today's environment, it does make sense to have 3-cell protease inhibitors in your system on an ongoing basis to improve your overall immunity and hopefully to support your immune system in the face of what might come about. So for us, this has been targeted as the mass market product. It's priced as such, so it's not $300. It's at the $100 price point with discounts for subscriptions and other items. We have started to see a significant uptick in interest in both Tollovir and Tollovir Daily, given recent news. And so we are, thinking through what the right strategy is with these products as we move things forward, and especially as we advance Tollovir. With that said, we're very excited about these products. We think these are important products that need to be on the market, and we do think that people should have them available to them if they need them. And we won't say anything beyond that. So for us, this group of products, we think really represents a game changer because, when we're speaking with investors, when we're speaking with other people in the market, it's one thing to say, we have something that may come sometime down the road. It's quite another thing to say you can buy on Amazon today. And if you can buy it on Amazon today and it can help you, and you feel it can help you today, we think that that will allow for, pardon the pun, for this to go viral. And we think that can happen. So we're building it up, and we do think there are a number of catalysts in this view. We are looking at different partnerships, and we have done a partnership in Europe with a company called T-Cell, LS Protect, that is now beginning to drive things forward in that market. And we're very excited about potentially doing transactions in other jurisdictions and improving the formulations to create new blends of Tollovir-based products. So, there seems to be a whole consumer strategy that's being built now around this unique 3-cell protease inhibition claim that no other dietary supplement has in the marketplace. And we're a first mover in this area. And so we think there's a lot of space for us to have a very significant impact. Now, moving on to our more traditional business uses, we have the diagnostics that are proprietary to us, as well as our testing. So with regards to our CLIA-CAP lab Provista Diagnostics, we are currently doing PCR testing, CPAS neutralizing antibody testing, as well as respiratory panels. We just signed some reference lab agreements that have finally gotten our volume in and around 1,000 per test per day, which, for us means that we can generate well over $1 million a month in revenue, potentially much higher than that, and really sets the base for us to have a book of business that we can expand on. The good thing about, while not having direct connection to some of the clients is not the ideal solution, the good thing about having reference labs agreements, it's a bulk contract. So we're getting a lot of samples in one go when we go, as opposed to picking up smaller numbers at a time and trying to build. Two, generally more consistent. And a lot of labs know each other. So if we execute as we have for our current reference labs clients, we build a good reputation, which will make us a reference lab of choice. And three, and more importantly, once they're sending us testing for one area, we become a potential to send other tests. So we can start to develop additional revenue streams beyond our PCR and our CPAS neutralizing antibody testing. So that's very exciting for us. We have historically, how we initially built our revenue in 2020 was around reagent sales, and in Q1 We did run into challenges with this reagent business where some lab clients ultimately terminated, we think inappropriately. And so we ended up in a position where we really wanted to have further control. And that's why focusing on our own labs makes more sense. And we may ultimately expand our own lab footprint by buying labs as we move forward. So really having some clients in this reagent sales business has given us a great insight into other aspects of the lab business. And we think that some of those clients may be acquisition targets and immediately jump us into additional verticals beyond just COVID. Now, with regards to our proprietary testing, as I mentioned, through our Provista lab and our COVID labs, we've generated a base of revenue. The question is, how do we really drive that revenue to a much higher multiple and better margins going forward beyond what we're doing now? We intend to continue to expand our PCR and other COVID business, but we have to go back to the bread and butter of the company, which is really breast cancer testing. And our Videssa breast cancer test is the lead product that we think is going to generate significant interest in the marketplace and really change the standard of care for women's health and breast cancer testing. A little bit about the market. 30 million women undergo mammograms annually in the United States. About 40% of those women have what they call dense breast. Dense breast means you do not have sufficient vasculature, or the density of the tissue around the breast is such that you cannot get a good image that will allow for a distinction of whether they believe you have cancer or you don't. When that happens, you move to secondary screening. Ultimately, that could be problematic because you end up with a biopsy, which in and of itself creates a lot of anxiety and can lead to side effects such as infection. So really, there's a new legislation has been passed to inform patients of this because patients were getting multiple screens, which could and multiple biopsies, which could in fact trigger cancer. And so it's a safety concern. So this is a big problem that we think we have the solution for. With that, we have our Videssa early breast cancer screening test, which has been rigorously validated in 3 clinical studies. We've got sensitivity upwards of 92% and a negative predictive value in and around 98.4%. So based upon the data and some consulting work we've done, we think we can see a combined reduction of about 45% in the numbers of biopsies in the BI-RADS3, BI-RADS4 population that are seen here in dense breast. And that could have a very, very significant impact for women across the country and women worldwide. The Videssa test had over $50 million invested into it, and we were able to acquire it because of some relationships we had and our positioning in the market with our other cancer screening technologies. And so we're taking the full value of this investment and all of the tremendous clinical work that was done with our collaborators at Stanford, Harvard, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, and other key institutions throughout the country, MD Anderson, and we're going to be bringing this forward in 2022. We have also a blood test for Alzheimer's that we expect additional data to read out on in the first half of 2022 that we're very excited about, especially in the face of the first drug for Alzheimer's that's been approved in nearly 20 years. So we think that there's going to be a significant increase in demand for screening as a result of Aduhelm, and we think Limpro could provide that important piece. And then finally, we have our overall immunoscreening platform that's been targeted initially at cancers and specifically breast cancer and colon cancer. This is TBIA. It's an AI platform, and so based on a blood test and spectroscopy. And so it's all about gathering more and more data to generate positive and predictive value and negative predictive value that will then allow us to go to the FDA. Given that this is more of an AI-driven black box test, it's not something they're used to, and so you need an overwhelming amount of data to take this forward. And we intend to bring that. Finally, we talked a little bit about our 3-cell protease biology test, Tolla test. We do see here some clinical data, which we're very, very excited about. We actually believe that this test is more sensitive than the PCR test and should be used both for upfront screening before advancing to a PCR, so it could potentially be a better version of antigen because we think we could pick up patients earlier than PCR, earlier than antigen, and that this is truly measuring infectivity, which is really the key. You know, it's not whether you're infected, which whether or not you can infect somebody else. And so we think we can give a much better handle on that infectivity. And by doing that, we can allow for better clinical determinations, understanding of quarantines and isolation. And that will add significant value. We're in the process now. We've done some work in terms of engineering planning for a device that can do large-scale screening of schools, hospitals, airports, offices, and we intend to bring the first prototypes forward for a mass screening program in 2022. So with that, we have our management team. Key people to focus on there, Dr. Jorge Leon, who's our Chief Medical Officer. Very soon, we will have Dr. Dorit Arad in our 3CL Sciences division focused on the antiviral. So we'll be we're very interspaced in this area. And then in summary, we have proprietary technology platforms. We have very scalable and replicable model with our diagnostics. We've got a wealth of potential strategic partnerships, not only in our diagnostics, but the products of our diagnostics, which includes our dietary supplements and our therapeutics. We have revenue and we have significant near-term revenue opportunity, not only direct, but also through some partnerships. This is when we have T-cell and some new revenue streams we're bringing forward. And we are going after some very, very large markets that are underserved. With that, I open the floor to questions, and thank you everyone for listening.
All right. Thank you, Gerald. We do have some questions for you, lots of questions for you. So we'll have time for just a few, but let's get into it. Ed Newton asks, if you got favorable results from the interim analysis of hospitalized COVID-19 patients, what would be the time frame for an EUA?
Well, the first thing with regards to an EUA, it's an EUA in which jurisdictions. So one, obviously in Israel, where the current trial is ongoing and where NLC is headquartered, some of those conversations are already beginning now. Obviously, everyone's waiting on the data, but in terms of understanding the formulation, the safety profile, that's happening. And as the need goes up in a jurisdiction, then obviously the desire to get an EUA for that regulatory body improves. The other area where we're already having certain conversations is through our partner in Greece. T-cell, they obviously are very, very well connected given Themis's extensive experience bringing dietary supplements to market. And so they have also begun to engage with regards to approval. We think, Israel and then a key country in Europe are both very good places to get started and could set the stage for others. So we think it could come reasonably quickly, especially in jurisdictions that need it. Beyond that, as I mentioned, we're going to be moving forward to phase 2/3, and we think, as things move along, that interim data, which may be 4 or 5 months out from here, and then final data, which could be 5 to 6 months out, or other points where you could get emergency uses. And given that it looks like we're going to get another wave with Omicron and whatever else comes next, we think that there's a lot of opportunity for Tollovir in the EUA.
Ray Hatch asks, is Tollovir being evaluated for its potential to improve performance of athletes? And can you address how Amarantis Bioscience may benefit from NASDAQ listing of Todos?
Sure. With regards to whether or not athletes are using it, yes. Some athletes are using Tollovir as a dietary supplement. Again, we haven't seen it. We're not making any claims with regards to Tollovir. With regards to athletic performance, I mean, it's a 3CL protease inhibitor. It's not an athletic enhancer. So we haven't seen any drop-off in performance. We haven't heard nobody complaining of using it, something bad happening, or feeling lethargic or sluggish. People have been typically very happy with it. And that's really all we can focus on, right now. With regards to Amarantis, Amarantis is a shareholder, a reasonably large shareholder of Todos. And obviously anything that happens with regards to Todos that is positive would have a very positive impact on Amarantis. Amarantis is in the middle of its own restructuring. It has, a CEO that's coming in to take that over. And so we think that Amarantis is also well positioned to benefit greatly from the success of Todos.
Ray Hatch asks, were there any reports documenting the anecdotal observations from the 5,000 subjects given Tollovir ingredients?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got tons and tons of reports. And in fact, some of those reports were included in our regulatory submissions to the Israeli authorities. So no, they're very well aware of the product, Dr. Arad and her history, and some of the clinicians who have been involved in the use of the product, because the product was not used as a standalone. It was used in combination with clients' physicians. And so far, that's why we believe we have a lot of support in bringing this forward.
Question from Drew Mary. Will the recent YouTube Tollovir video be used in marketing efforts like a commercial?
Yes, that's exactly what it's for. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned somewhere, we have, a new marketing head who's kind of helping to spearhead those efforts and start to coordinate broader use. We are working on customer acquisition costs so that we can start to, confirm exactly what kind of marketing budgets we're going to need to get to scale. And simultaneously, we've also been approached with regards to potential partnerships. And so we have to decide if we really want to become a marketing company and market this, or if we want to stick to our core and focus on, the more regulated therapeutics and diagnostics, and let, a company focused on marketing do that. So those conversations are ongoing. We're obviously have to act as if we're going to do it ourselves, but it may be that we partner off in transactions reasonably similar to the ones we did in Greece.
Any updates from the profits from the 50,000 Tollovir order on the Amazon sales? And Cody Rush wants to know, how many bottles of Tollovir daily have you sold and profits off of this?
We're not giving any financial information with regards to the products. We can say that we make good margin, and we're reinvesting that margin to grow the business. With regards to the 50,000 order, we're in the middle of manufacturing, and we're also in the middle of scale up for that manufacturing. So we may have some significant developments there as we look to get to mass scale. We want to control all of that. Right now, we're using a third-party manufacturer. Ultimately, we think that this product has significant potential, and so our focus is really being very diligent, stepwise, making sure that we get the right customer acquisition cost and we get the right profile of customers that when we target, especially online. Tollovir Daily is something that people can walk into the stores and typically buy for an ongoing thing, but Tollovir in particular is much better suited as an e-commerce product, and so really reaching the people where they are when they need that support in that moment is our focus, and so that's going to be that's how we're approaching it, finding that profile, figuring out what that person likes is going to be searching for, and being there when they're searching for it is our focus, and that's the idea.
Great. Last question for you. Jim Reese wants to know if you can comment on which NASDAQ listing standard the company plans to use to qualify for uplisting, and what is the minimum share price target for this standard?
We haven't decided that yet. We're in a unique situation because we do have revenue, so we could be multiple listing standards. And we need to figure out which one is the best based upon where we are, cash position, runway, whether we've partnered things off or not, because a lot of things are happening together. So for us, if we think about what the path is to making that kind of decision, obviously our growing revenue at Provista gives us flexibility and gives us some time. We see Tollovir sales growing, giving us some flexibility, but not necessarily that much more time because it's very time sensitive. Tollovir is a very, very time sensitive product. And we think the time is now. And so we do want to push this aggressively. Obviously, the phase 2 data with Tollovir could be a massive inflection point for the company. And so, we're triaging between those realities as well as just the overall market. We've seen, biotech stocks down 40%. It's not really the market you want to be going into. So we're hoping that in the new year, things will pick up, certainly around JP Morgan. And we are presenting on Tollovir at the Precision Medicine World Conference in San Francisco towards the end of January. We think all of those things could be significant catalysts for us as we prepare for our uplist.
Well, we certainly hope that you come back in January and give us those updates of where you guys are going and how you're moving forward, because lots of good progress here. And as always, we've got tons of questions more for you, but we're going to send them to you in an email so you can answer on your own time. Thank you so much for joining us again on our Emerging Growth Conference.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Gerald. Thank you, everyone. What a great day. So many wonderful companies out there. It's been a joy to introduce them all to you. So in just a second, you're going to be redirected to the registration page for the next conference. So stay on to reserve your spot early. On behalf of all of us at Emerging Growth, I'd like to thank all of our presenters and our attendees for helping make this conference such a great success. Remember that a complete replay of this conference, separated by company, will be made available on the Emerging Growth Conference YouTube. That's youtube.com/Emerging Growth Conference. Subscribe there. Follow us on Twitter at Emerging Growth C. We post all new information to Twitter first. I'm Anna Berry, and on behalf of myself and everyone who made this conference possible today, I wish you a great rest of your day and a very successful week, and happy holidays to everyone. We'll see you back in January. Be well.